Hello, I'm Vanya Stoycheva, a PhD student at the National Institute of Geophysics, Geodesy and Geography at the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences. Last month, I published my first scientific paper with Untitled Geneletti from University of Trento. I will present the main result from this paper. As there is a growing demand for regulating ecosystem services in urban areas, which is important for urban planning, a comprehensive review of the current urban ecosystem studies and their connection with urban planning actions was performed. The main objective of the review paper is to provide systematic information on regulating ecosystem services in urban ecosystems from urban planning's perspective, as well as to better understand linkages with green infrastructure and methods used for their assessment. The most studied regulating ecosystem services within reviewed publications are regulation of chemical composition of the atmosphere and oceans, regulation of temperature and humidity, including ventilation and transpiration, and hydrological cycle and water flow regulation, including flood control and coastal protection. The main challenge of this review was connected with the broad scientific terms used for studying ecosystem services and urban planning. This was taken into account in the keyword searching string preparation. As a final result, only 56 papers from the overall pool of papers were included in the review. Research has a tendency, especially studying the three main regulating ecosystem services, to take between 7 and 12 months or more than 10 years. Papers with seasonal timescales are either used with remote sensing derivatives with a resolution between 10 and 30 meters, or are used for studies with a high-resolution scale from 1 to 10 meters throughout field measurements or using local administrative data with high resolution. Biophysical assessment methods are the most used for regulating ecosystem service assessment. This group includes three subgroups of methods: direct measurement methods, indirect measurement methods, and modeling methods. These subgroups are equally distributed within the biophysical group. The distribution within every subgroup is different. The most diverse is the subgroup of direct measurement methods. Remote sensing and Earth observation are the most used within this subgroup because of the availability and easy usage of this data for defining ecosystem service units, service providing, and service benefiting areas. The relationship amongst the most studied regulating ecosystem services, the scale of the study, ecosystem service spatial data, and their resolution show a significant correlation at the city region scale level. At this level, the most commonly studied regulating ecosystem service alone is the regulation of the chemical composition of the atmosphere and oceans. This ecosystem service is assessed alone and in land cover, land use, and land use land cover spatial units with a resolution between 10 and 30 meters for papers using Landsat-derived spatial data, and with a resolution up to 10 meters for papers using field observation-derived data or high-resolution data from local sources. There is a significant cluster of papers studied all three main regulating ecosystem services, and their study scale varies amongst site, city, and review papers without scale. About the main objective of this review paper, the relationship between urban planning and regulating ecosystem services. Urban planning has been studied in only 1/3 of all reviewed papers. This represents a knowledge gap in studies both assessing ecosystem service and defining their urban planning implementation. The majority of urban planning-related papers studied the three main regulating ecosystem services at the same time and give examples of urban planning practices implementation. The other implementation tool is Principles for Territorial Management, which is used in papers studying all three main ecosystem services as well as other regulating ecosystem services. The relationship between regulating ecosystem services, urban planning, and green infrastructure is shown in the usage of green infrastructure as the main ecosystem service providing element of urban ecosystems. The majority of regulating ecosystem service papers study green infrastructure elements as a spatial unit or as part of service providing and service benefiting areas. Most green infrastructure classes are studied within papers studying all three regulating ecosystem services, whereas amongst them, the most researched class is parks and recreation. The other connection is the number of used different green infrastructure classes within the three studied regulating ecosystem services. Green infrastructure classes are most used in the assessment of regulation of the chemical composition of the atmosphere and oceans.